Oh, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining me today for our CoolCare Masterclass, part two of our Rota Masterclasses. If you were here last time, we looked at the basics of Rota management, and now we're going to be looking today at some more advanced Rota management tips to get your rotas the way you want them on your system. Well, I'm sure you're all aware, CoolCare is here to make operating care home easier, more efficient, and more profitable. Today, focusing on the easy and efficiency side of things of our rotas in there. What we're going to look at specifically is, well, first of all, using Zoom. We're going to be, if you do have any questions as I'm going through today's masterclass, you can use the Q&A option on your Zoom window to ask any questions on there. Either I'll answer them in the session or a member of our team is on hand to answer any questions in there as well. So anything you think of as we're going through, feel free to ask away. And at the end of the session, once we've gone through everything, we'll have some time afterwards for you to answer any questions. If you want to stick around at the end, you can ask any further questions you've got on anything you think of. No. Let's see. What we'll be looking at today is picking up from our last masterclass, the more advanced rota management tips we're looking at today in terms of updating our shifts in the long term and the short term on there, as well as exploring how the staff can interact with your rota via our staff messaging. So we'll be looking at adding in additional shifts to our rota, how we can do that if we need to add in extra shifts where it's required, or even how we can split shifts on our rota if we need to take a day shift and split it into, a morning and afternoon, something like that on there. How to update our rota setup to update things in the long term. So if we need to change our shift patterns and stuff like that, how to update those through the rota setup page, as well as how you can find cover for shifts via our staff messaging and how that lets our staff interact with our rota from there. So I'm going to swap over to my demo system and get things underway. Just to be aware, all the data I'm showing today is all my demo system, so it's all made up for the purpose of this session, no real data being used, of course. So if I share my screen, pop onto CoolCare now. So, as you might guess, looking at rota management, we're going to be looking at our rota under the staff section on there. For those that were in our last masterclass or anyone who's familiar with your rota, you should know this is where our live rota appears on CoolCare, so where we would be able to add our staff onto the rota, like I've got on mine up to the end of this week. And where we can make little changes to our rota, if you remember from the last session, where we're able to change staff around on our shifts or update them, swap them around, etc., all from here. What we're focusing on today is kind of some additional stuff you can do with it as well to keep things up to date with changes to your staffing. For example, firstly, where we might need additional shifts on our rota. So where in a day we might need to add in an extra shift for an additional staff member to cover on there. If we've got something going on in the home, for example, an event where we need more staff in there, we might have a one-to-one with a resident that requires an extra staff member to do that one-to-one with them in there. Stuff like that that we might need additional help for. So as you can see on my rota here, I've actually got a couple of additional lines on my rota that are just empty. There's no shifts in there normally, but there's additional space where we can add in extra shifts if we need to. So all I would do is if I say I want an extra care assistant in for tomorrow, I've got these two spaces underneath my regular shifts where I can just click into either one of them, and it'll bring up this box for me, telling me this is a new shift for a care assistant on the 30th of July, as it says there. And we can then add in a new shift on that day. A couple of ways you can do it. If I click on the drop-down box there where it says shift, I can see my shifts that are already set up in my system. So from the shift definitions in my home setup, these are the shifts I could use normally for a care assistant. But I'm not limited to those. You can see there's an extra option at the top there to do an ad hoc shift instead. So if it's something out of the ordinary that's not one of your regular shift times that you wouldn't normally use, you can use as an ad hoc one instead. It will ask for a day period, just saying kind of what part of the day that falls under for our budget on the rota. And then you can pop in the start time and end time for saying when the shift would start and end. They might say, no, not 1 a.m. We'll do 10 a.m. End time 4 p.m. 6 hours in there, as that shift is going to be, as it tells me there. And we can then add that shift onto here. And there you go. That shift is then popped in there, so we can see the additional shift added in for our staff members. From there, with the extra shift added in, obviously it's not assigned to someone right away, we can then click on the shift and we see every staff member that's available for it, as we saw in our previous masterclass in there. We've got all the staff available to cover that shift. So is anyone that can do a care assistant shift in my home, I can just pick the person I want and go from there. Select my staff member, and just like that puts them into the shift. So yeah, the extra shift is added in, assign a staff member to it, and that's sorted from there. Now, One thing that will do with that extra shift added in and then assigned to a staff member is it does affect our budget. You can see right at the top of the shifts here, I've got this little bit that's turned blue. It was originally green on there. And this is our budget on our rota, essentially comparing our live rota to the initial budget from the rota setup in there. So where it's turned blue on here, it means we've gone over our budget because, in this case, we've added in an extra shift covering an extra 6 hours. And so that covers it, adds it on from there. So if you see any blue on your rota up here, it means there's been an additional shift added in and say updated to say we've gone over the budget. But that's not all that say the adding shifts is good for. You can obviously, like I say, add in extra shifts where it's required, but it's also useful for you might need to split a shift, for example. Say I've got a shift that a person can cover, say, half of that I need to find cover for, but I still need to find someone to obviously cover the other half of that shift. Let's take this one I've got for Friday. Staff member's on a holiday, and I found someone that can cover it, but they say they can only serve, up to say midday, for example, in there. So obviously they don't want to put them on the full day shift. Instead, what can I do is split it. So to split the shift, you would first delete the original one. So I don't need this, full day shift here anymore. I can click into it, and you can find the delete button there, the top right corner. We'll just give you a little confirmation box so you sure you want to delete this. Big thing to note with deleting shifts is, as it says there, this will not affect the rolling shift pattern. So we're not affecting anything in the long term ongoing from there. It's just a single occurrence we're deleting from this day. So I can delete that shift from there, which gets rid of it, as you can see. And then we can add in, essentially, say, the first half of that shift from there. Click on that, and then choose our shift. So in this case, I'm going to do another ad hoc one for the start of the day. We'll do from 7 a.m. to midday in there. And that's then the first half of our shift on there. The second half, I've got these extra lines underneath at the bottom like I did previously. I can click in that space and add in the rest of that shift from there. Again, another ad hoc one in my case here to do it for the rest of the day from midday till 7 p.m. Pop that in there. And there we go. That's then the two halves of those shifts split in there. And again, they work like any other shift. I can click into those and say who's doing either half of it just by choosing the person I want to assign them to it. That's one half filled in, and the other half as well. We'll say, what does it? And there we are. That's that 12-hour shift split into 2 half days in there. However you want to break them down, you can do it through that. And again, you can see how that does slightly affect our budgets, slightly differently to regularly. It's actually, I guess, got the budget kind of split in there. So what's happened here is essentially I've split, one shift that's 12 hours into two halves. So the hours are still within budget, still the 48 hours that we're expecting. But because I've turned one shift into 2 shift, it says now I've got one additional shift in there over the budget in that case. So it shows that you've got an extra shift on the day, but the hours still add up and make sense because all I've done is taken one shift and turn it into 2. So yeah, that's how your split shifts work there. Again, if you see that kind of split of the color coding, it's likely because you've got a split shift on your rota that someone's done. So, yeah, that's to say the little tweaks you can make to your shifts, adding in new ones where they're required, where you've got the extra space, either from kind of just part of shift patterns or where you've got those extra lines, always good to have on them. And then splitting shifts the same. Remember, delete a shift, not going to affect anything in the long run, and you can then add in additional shifts wherever they're required. That's all well and good, of course, for small short-term changes on here. But what if we need to make a long-term change to our live rota? So I need to update something in the long run, like say someone's shift pattern, my staff budget, for example, needed changing. I've got new starters with new shift patterns, things like that. They wouldn't be done on our rota setup, sorry, on our live rota here. They would instead be done on the rota setup, which you can access from your rota here. You can see there's a button at the top there, rota setup. If I click that, it will take me to the rota setup page, which can be found under your care home section. So the rota setup, for those unaware, this is essentially your template version of your rota, that perfect ideal world version of it, where you say, these are the patterns I have staff to work to, these are the number of shifts I need filling in every day, they all get put in through there. And if we need to update that and change the patterns and budget we have, it will be done through the rota setup here. So be aware when you're changing your rota setup, it's going to affect your live rota in the long run. So again, it's not going to be small short-term changes we're making. This is kind of a permanent, ongoing, rolling rota changes on there. So how can we change it? Well, it depends what changes need to be made. Say I need to update the shift pattern for some staff members. I can do it through here. I can kind of override them essentially with new ones. So let's say my senior carers are going to be changing their shift patterns slightly to update things in there. We can click this top senior carer, which says the position at the top there. And using this box here, the shift pattern builder, this is where we can build different shift patterns for different people to work to. So I'm just going to create a new shift pattern for a senior carer in here. Tells me what I've chosen there. It will ask for a first shifting pattern, essentially saying kind of what day and week of your rolling rota this shift pattern would start from. Typically, you want that to be week 1, day 1. That's kind of, your Monday of week 1 is starting from in there. And you can build it through that. And say currently my senior carers are on a 1-week rolling rota on here, but I might want to change it to do 2 weeks instead for them in that. So let's say week 1's going to be the same as their normal days, which is 4 days on, a long day shift, and then 3 days off. That's what they do right now. But week 2 might be slightly different now. We might have changed things to say that week 2, they now do different shifts. We can add on another row to say that they might work, let's do 3 days on and 4 days off instead. We're kind of going back and forth like that. And so that is our then 14-day, 2-week shift pattern built up in there, which it tells me there the pattern fits, as you can see. So when you're building a shift pattern, you'll always be able to see that pattern fits at the top there, at the bottom, sorry. And that means that this fits into my full rolling rota on there. If the numbers don't add up, it will tell you there the pattern doesn't fit, and you won't be able to build that pattern. So be aware of that as you're building a shift pattern in there. And I can update it. So this changes. So obviously week 1's still the same, but week 2 now is different. For this other senior care, you can see there the 3 days and 4 off on that. And so I'm going to update the other senior carer to just fit in with that as well. So to doing the opposite of the first one, having 4 days off and then 3 days on for the weekend, and then doing 3 days on, 3 days off, and then 4 days on after that, like so. Build that pattern in there. And there you have those 2 shift patterns edited. So you can tweak shift patterns in here. Say if you needed to add in additional shift patterns, you can click the button at the top there, push shift pattern to add in a new line. If I wanted another care assistant line in there, I can pop it in, add it in there. And let's say I need just 1 more care assistant every week for my budget in here. I'm actually going to do it on this bottom line on that. We'll pop it in there. To do it as just kind of a block of shifts that need filling out, you could do it as just 1 day repeating the shift you want in there every day, and that will add it in all in one go. And we'll see that on there in a moment. So yeah, that's how you can kind of update your budgets, update your shift patterns in the rota setup on here. The main thing to be aware of when you do update anything on your rota setup in here, it doesn't take effect on the live rota right away. This is still just affecting my draft rota. When you make some changes and then you want them to take effect on the live rota, you would need to apply the changes with the button at the top here. This is going to take our changes we've made on our rota setup and apply them to the live rota. And in order to do that, it will ask for a date of first shift, essentially saying when this change takes effect from. And there's 2 ways you can go about this. You can either do it from just a date in the past, which means the rota will basically change over immediately. It'll just be in there straight away from that date in the past. Or you can instead do it from a date in the future. So if I say my changes are taking effect from next Monday, I can go to next Monday, the 3rd of August, and say that my new rota takes effect and the new shift patterns change over from there. So I can click that, which says in this case it's week 2 of my shift pattern. So essentially the new shift pattern is going to be starting from week 2 of my live rota on there. But that's okay. If I then click create rota on here, those changes will take effect and update on my staff rota. Give that a moment to load up. So we can see this week, nothing's changed. It's still using my same shift patterns in there. But from next week, the 3rd of August, you can see I've got that new line added in there, bottom at the moment, and my new shift patterns taking effect for my senior carers, doing the 4 and 3s for them. So yeah, you can change your rota setup, and then that'll affect your live rota when you want it to take effect from. With that. Uh, one additional thing I can do back on the rota setup, I go back to it on here now, is in my case with my rota now applied from a future date, it shows me my currently applied rota, and I have this option to then move things around. You can see these little arrows appear next to my positions. So the extra characters that line I added on previously, I can now shuffle it up, move it up to the top on there. So it's now just a bit more nice and uniform. And that should then affect my live rota straight away. There you are, you can see an extra line moved across. So yeah, we can always tweak the layout of the rota from the rota setup in terms of what order it all shows up in there, moving things up and down if you need to as well. So yeah, just remember, you only need to change your rota setup if it's like a long-term, essentially permanent effect that you want to take effect on there, like updating a shift pattern for a staff member permanently, like updating your budget to have more shifts on there for staff. Those are the big changes you'd be making on the rota setup. Small changes where you just need to change single shifts or or a couple of days, that would all be done on the live rota here. So always remember, if you're not sure where to update your rota, it's long-term or short-term. If it's a long-term change, do it on the rota setup. If it's a short-term change, do it on the live rota. That's the best way to think about it. One extra thing to mention then, that is how we can use our rota to find cover for our shifts. If we need to get someone to cover a shift and we haven't got anything sorted out yet, we can use CoolCare's rota to help us do that. So I'm actually going forward to next week now, where I've got those extra shifts added in. We can use those as an example. So if you click on a shift that is unassigned, that has nobody on it, a white one on here. As we've done previously, you can choose which staff members you want to cover the shift from that. But you'll notice any staff member that has a mobile number in this number column will also have the option on the right-hand side to message a staff. You'll have the option to text them from the rota. So if I go down, I can use one as an example in here that I've got. Gonna just quick message staff on the staff member here, and that will send a text message. In my example here, I'm just going to send it to one person, one phone number on there, but you can send it to multiple people if you'd like. You can send it to as many people as you want on the shift on there. You can send as many texts as you want from CoolCare from the rota in here. Now, so from the staff member side of things, they will receive a text message on there. We'll go to their mobile. Unfortunately, I can't actually show you it because it is on a real mobile here, but it just tells them about the shift. So it says you've been requested to cover a shift. It tells them what home it's for, what the position is. So in this case, Sam's home, a care assistant in there, as well as the date and time of the shift. So 3rd of August, 7 a.m. till 7 p.m. All the detail they would need to know if they can cover that shift or not. From there, in the message itself, there's a little link to a web page they can open up on their mobile. And with that, they can then have the option to respond to the text message saying yes or no if they can cover that shift. Essentially, there's two big buttons on there, red and green, yes or no if they can cover it. All they would do is choose that on their mobile. We can say yes, they can on here. I'll tell you what, I'll send another message for a different shift. And we're going to say no to that one from someone else. So that way we can see what it looks from both ways. So this other shift, I'm going to say no, they can't. All right. So that is those then sorted, or at least responded to, I should say. But the response is only half the story. Once the staff member responds to the message, your rota isn't going to update right away to put them on the shift. It's not going to put someone on a shift without you knowing. We still have to choose who we want to do it. But how do we know when they've responded? Well, that's where we use this button at the top, the little blue one that says cover requests. If you click that button there, it'll open up this box on the left-hand side. And this will basically be an option to show all the shifts that you send out messages for to see if people have responded to them and to then be able to follow up from there. So in this case, I've sent out messages for 2 shifts, one of them for the 3rd, one for the 5th that I did as well, one for my days, one for my nights. And so it tells me all the details of the shift itself, and then you can see underneath that where it said if people have responded. So in this case, I sent it to one person, he said yes, so it says one can cover. You can see the other one where it's not, where they said no, it says one unavailable instead. And if they don't respond, it would just say, one awaiting on there instead. So you can see how many people have said yes, said no, not responded to your text message from here to give you an overview of that. If you want to see the full detail, you can click the little button that says go to shift next to it, and it will then highlight the shift that we sent a message for. I'll do it for the other one just to show you. Go to that night shift instead. So that way you know which shift we sent out the message for. If I click into that one there, we can then see our full details. So on here, where we're looking at the staff details, if I go down in the message column on the right-hand side, you can see here where it had that, well, first it said message staff, and then when I clicked it, it changed to say they've not responded, or a question mark. And now they have responded and said yes, it says a little green tick there to tell me, yes, they can do it. And it even tells me exactly when they've responded to it as well, the date and time of that response when it was sent. So you can see when people have responded to it, you know when they've responded as well. So if you're sending out a shift request to multiple people, you can choose who you want to do it. If it's first come, first serve, you know who's responded the earliest on there, and you can make the decision from there. But as I say, it will always be up to you to make the decision once people have responded. So CoolCare will never put someone on a shift automatically without you choosing. So in this case, he said yes, he can do the shift. Well, in that case, click on him there. We'll assign him to that shift. And if you then refresh the little cover request with a little button there, it'll disappear from there because it's now been responded to and been assigned to someone, so it's all good. As for the other one, I'll show you that. Where they say no, it puts a little red cross instead, but does still tell you when they responded as well, in case you need to know that. So I can leave that one for now on there instead. But yeah, with that one covered as well, there's an additional option that when you assign a staff member to the shift, it will send them another text to let them know. This little bit at the top there, text staff when assigned to a shift, does just that. When you put someone on a single shift, it sends them a text to let them know. Again, giving the details of the shift, saying what the home and position is, what the date and time of the shift is as well, so they know. That way it works as a good confirmation for those that have been put on the shift. They know then they've been put on it if they've received that additional text from there. And yeah, useful for say finding cover shifts. Just use that messaging whenever you like, and the staff can receive those messages from your system and respond to them on there. Just remember, use that cover request box to keep an eye on them when those responses come back, so you know when you can put someone on a shift. Easy as that. And that is all the options I had to show you on there. That is kind of the additional stuff of managing your live rota on there. So remember, when you're adding extra shifts or splitting them around, you might see it affect your budget, but remember all those small short-term changes you're making in there. When you're making, if you need to make a long-term change, remember, go back to the rota setup and then remember to apply those changes to take effect from when you want them to. And remember those unassigned shifts, you can text the staff from there and they can respond to them and pick up shifts whenever they need to. That is everything to show for this session. Just a couple of things to mention before we wrap up. Here we are. If you were interested in any additional training on CoolCare after today, you can get in touch with us at Training Team. You may have some extra training available on your as part of your CoolCare subscription, on there. You have at least 30 minutes free of charge sessions available to use, if they haven't been used already, of course, on there. So feel free to contact us at training. You can email us or phone up our team and we can check your availability, get something booked in. For any additional help you might need, you can get in touch with our support team, of course. You can give them a call. They're available Mondays to Friday, 9 to 5. You can also email them for any non-urgent queries in there as well. Or you can use our live chat available in CoolCare itself. Again, they're available Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. Or we do have an AI assistant for any out-of-hours queries as well. And for any other queries regarding your sub-account of subscription to CoolCare, you can email our customer success team on there. Anything not technical, more about your subscription. As I say, they'll be able to answer any questions and help you out from there. But all I have to say for today is thank you for joining. Hope we see you again soon. Our next main webinar will be in 4 weeks' time. I've got the next one in 2 weeks is going to be some time off. So instead, it's going to be in 4 weeks at the end of August, but you'll get a email regarding that. We do have an additional webinar next week on Friday, if you're interested, for more of an open Q&A and to show any new stuff off on CoolCare as well from that. But yeah, If you do want to stick around, feel free to pop some questions in our Q&A. We'll stick around for another few minutes. If anyone has any additional questions, and if you do have any feedback on the masterclass, you can scan the QR code on screen and send us some feedback on what you'd like to see masterclasses on as well. Give us some ideas, and we'll always take them into account. But otherwise, thank you all for joining me for today's masterclass, and I hope to see you again soon for our next one.